Good morning, good afternoon. How you doing there? YouTube and Facebook. We're going live. Setting up the TikTok one right now, real quick. So it's Friday. It's Friday. It's the end of the week and the last day. So what you gonna do? So we're gonna have this. We got a hard stop today at 2 p.m. my time, East Central Standard Time Zone, 3 p.m. your time frame, because I got somewhere to be. So today we are talking about something that most people probably never heard of. Most people probably never heard of this, but this is what we're talking about today, the biblical gap theory. So welcome to the show. I'm Coach Renz. Welcome to Deconstructing Christianity, where we talk about and discuss why we've deconstructed from Christianity. We emphasize the lessons that we've learned in order to continue our deconstructing. And so we are here. How you doing, Becca? How you doing, Tavis? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the live. I know I published a video like 15, 20 minutes ago on this very subject matter. So if you saw that video, great. If you haven't saw it, go back and watch it anyway, even though we're going to discuss everything here. But just go and watch that one anyway. So yeah, do that. So, hey, Angie Joy, Shay, how you doing? So our discussion today is about biblical gap theory. I don't know if many Christians are going to be able to discuss this one. I don't know how this conversation is going to go when it comes to adding other people onto the stage. Mainly, this one is going to be about people learning something new today, understanding something new today, even more reasons why we deconstructed from Christianity, because when we actually start learning about the history of this religion and the teachings of this religion, we start to see that this religion truly is just a big clusterfuck. How you doing, Sherry? How you doing, Pot Sauce? So, and that's what we know, this religion is just a big old clusterfuck of information that's going on today. What up, Fred? I don't care that you're picking up your sister. What does that matter to me? I mean, that's good. Pick up your sister and, cherish that relationship. Why do people feel the need to tell me stuff like that? Oh, man. But like I said, I did a video, a 10-minute video about this subject matter. We're going to expand even more into it today. And hopefully the questions and things of that nature will allow us to go even deeper into it. But we're talking about the biblical gap theory and then how it's been used to explain the war in heaven, as well as racism and Christianity. But Kevin, the graph that I made is kind of sucks. Yeah, that one kind of sucks. Hard to read. That graph is a little difficult to read, isn't it? I think it's difficult to read. I probably shouldn't have done that graph. Let me see here. Let's see if we can change that graph. Let me take a minute here to create a new one. Maybe if I change the color of, that's a lot of damn color. I know how to change this one. Because that's too much color in this one. I'm just gonna make that smaller. Let's raise some of this stuff up. And I'll make a new one so that it's more legible, because this is kind of terrible. This is kind of terrible, the way this one looks. So we're gonna give me a few minutes. Give me a minute here to change that graph so that it's more legible. Because I know I wrote it and I know it's hard to read, so I can imagine to some of you guys it's probably even more difficult to read. Now, as I'm doing this, because I know how to multitask, just a reminder that we have our meetup here in San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. And I encourage everyone to go to my YouTube page at Coach Renz 33 and click on the page. I mean, the link that's in the description. And that link will allow you to be able to get your hotel reservations. It doesn't require you paying for it right now. It's something that you pay for later. Let's see. Created a new one. The hardest part is going to be getting it on the ticket top so that it's more legible. Yeah, that's better. That is 1,000 times better. Let's see here. TikTok, hope I might go away for a second, but it should come right back. Yeah, we still here, TikTok? Yeah, still there. Cool, 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 cool beans. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better, a lot easier to read. That's a lot better to read. Look at technology. I see some of my favorite, non-favorite people are on here on TikTok. That's great. Thank you for supporting the channel. Greatly appreciate you supporting the channel and the growth of the channel. The numbers go up every day. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Y'all. Oh man. Okay, so what up? Debbie, look at you getting on here early. Look at Debbie getting here early. What up, Kevin? So just a question. How many of you guys saw the video that I just posted about 30 minutes ago or less? That's on the biblical gap theory. If you've seen the video, put a 1 in there. Put a 2 if you've never heard of the biblical gap theory. You've never heard of the biblical gap theory, which is a gap in between the Adamic creation and that there was another creation prior to the Genesis creation. Or actually, it's kind of like within the Genesis creation, there's a gap. And so there's 2 creations there, not the first Genesis and second Genesis. I mean, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, right? Sherry says she's looking at it right now. Don't look at today. This matches more with what I'm wearing, dumbass. That's why I changed to put on this one. It's about fashion. I love how they grasp for straws. It is so amazing. It is so amazing how they grasp for straws. I got him. He took off the what was that? What's that thing called? The hand of Hansel. Got it. Which one would look better? This one with this shirt, with the burnt orange shirt, or the hand of Hansel? It's called fashion. I guess you're sitting in your mom's basement. They claim victory. All right. Great. To the people who never, okay, you saw the video, Debbie, so you've heard of it then now. Okay, so most of you have never heard of it. Never heard of it, never heard of it, never heard of it. Never heard of it. Cool. All right, so you got, so I see that most people right now are saying that they have never heard of it. All right. Cool. Okay. Sherry says she heard of it. All right. So you never heard of the biblical gap theory. Most people probably, okay, so most people who have not done research on early church fathers, who have not read the works of Origen, who have not read the Midrashes. If you've never read the Midrashes or Origen, or you've never really delved into the different theologies that early Christians had, because Origen is a second century Christian father, right? And you have to understand that at that time frame in first century, second century Christianity, one of the most popular books at the time frame was the books of Enoch, right? So the books of Enoch tells the whole story of this war in heaven. So when you see Jude quoting Enoch, or Paul, I believe in Hebrews, he quotes Enoch. I'm not sure exactly where with Paul, but they quote Enoch. They are quoting this because Enoch was considered valid scripture for the people at that time frame. So of course, many different ideas: war in heaven, the Nephilim and what happened to them, how they became evil. That's in Enoch. The ideas that Christians walk around with, believing that the Nephilim were evil, is only because of Enoch. How there are giants still on the earth after the flood is based on the book of Enoch, because Enoch claims that the giant Og was tied to the mast of the boat, of Noah's float, Noah's Ark. So these early church readers, these early Christians would have been reading Enoch, thinking of it as scripture. The early Jews, the Jews at that time frame, first century, well, from second century BCE till about second, third century CE, they still thought the book of Enoch was valid scripture that you should believe. So this is why midrashes were written about it. This is why midrashes have those stories in there. Now, according to just your Bible itself, it says that the Nephilim, which actually is the word for that means the fallen ones. So the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God that came down and had sex with the daughters of men, are not the fallen ones. It is the Nephilim that is the fallen ones, because that's what that word means, right? It doesn't just mean giants. But they are, in your Bible, you'll see that they are considered to be great men of renown, the heroes of old. There is absolutely nothing until you get to the story of Goliath. Some say Nimrod was a giant, but until you get to the story of Goliath, that you get this idea that the Nephilim, the giants, were evil, that they were eating people, they had consumed all the animals of the land, and so on and so forth. All right. I'm sorry. I love Pastor Matthew Van Risenberg. Jesus, I pray that you penetrate the host and plant your love seed. Final Trumpet will probably like that, being penetrated. Final Trumpet will probably like being penetrated, but I don't know. I like Pastor Matthew. You want Jesus to come inside people, that he wants Jesus to penetrate people. I'm sorry. Pastor Matthew, you've been my dude this week. You've given me a lot to laugh at. So anyway, where was I? Great men of renown, yes. So they read this book of Enoch. Now, when you read the book of Enoch, one of the other aspects, and the primary area that this comes from is from Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. So if you go read Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, it reads, when God began to create heaven and earth, the earth was unformed and void, and with darkness over the surface of the deep, and the wind from God sweeping over the waters. So this created a question in the mind of people like Origen, because the King James version of the Bible says that in the beginning God created, but in the beginning when God began to create suggests that he began creating at a certain time frame, that there may have been something before. Some theologians have even translated this to in a beginning when God began to create. Okay, I got to put this up real quick, because anytime somebody does a super chat, I definitely want to put up their comment and give my thanks to it. Evening peeps, love and sausages. Kisses. Thank you, Muttley Von Erich. You know, I was a big wrestling fan, so the Von Erichs, that was my thing. Those I used to like the Von Erichs. But anyway, but thank you for the 2 pounds. 2 pounds. They 2 pounds. That's more than $2 in American. So thank you very much, Muttley Von Erich. Appreciate that. So so this God began to create. So that suggested to people like Origen that there may have been another creation prior to this God. Now there were other aspects of it as well, because it then reads that, and I'm doing this differently than how I did it on the video because I have more time to do it. But he began to create the heavens and the earth. So a new creation, a new beginning. And it says that the earth was being unformed and void, where the words that are used there for unformed and void are only used one other time within the Bible, and that is in Jeremiah 4. So in Jeremiah 4, it is describing the destruction of a land and a city. It's describing how this God smited an area, and the place was, it was the hills and the mountains were shaking. falling down from mountains down to hills. I said hills into mountains in the earlier, which that's not how I wanted to phrase that, but that the mountains were shaken so much that they went from being a mountain down to a hill, that the cities were decimated and burned, and that there were no inhabitants in the land. And the two words that are used there is tohu and vavohu. Now, vavohu is spelled V-O-H-U, but it's pronounced like V-A-V-O-H-U. So vavohu. I don't speak Hebrew, so that's my best rendition of it. But these two words, tohu, mean to refer to a state of disorder, a lack of definite shape or structure. So it is not saying that there is nothing there. This is not raw material. This is not emptiness of space. Void, the word void, and we've had discussions about the word void before, right? We say the void of space, but we know that space is not void of matter, right? It is just at a state of emptiness that we see it as that. If a object is flying through space fast enough, it will create heat because there is matter and friction is there. So void does not mean complete emptiness, devoid of all atoms and everything like that, but it does suggest emptiness, meaning no inhabitants, lack of inhabitants, that the land has been decimated. It also means desolation. So when the Bible, and there's two times that it utilizes this, in Jeremiah, the plan is there, the place is there, the people are just gone, the city is destroyed, the land has been destroyed, the mountains are now hills. So it's still present, but it just has went through such a destructive situation. And Jeremiah is talking about, of course, if you understand the message of Jeremiah, it's about restoring Jerusalem, restoring the land after they are coming out of this captivity state and have been taken away from their land in Jerusalem. So and then God's face, then God's wind goes over the flutters over the waters, blows over the waters. So there are waters there. There's something there, right? It is not, it's not describing an emptiness of nothingness. It's describing that it is just the earth has been decimated by some force or some action that now makes the earth uninhabitable, right? So Origen and others questioned this. They thought about this situation and this is where the gap theory is. They believe that there's a gap of time that's missing here. What happened to the earth and the universe that created this situation where now the earth is in disarray, that is uninhabitable for life? Enoch brings this story and this idea into a storyline. So let me rephrase that. Yeah. Enoch brings this into a storyline of this gap of this war in heaven that many Christians believe occurred based on this heretical book. That seems problematic to me. You believe there was a war in heaven because of a heretical book, not because of anything that's actually in your book. Peaceful Storm, how you doing? Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, everybody else, but Peaceful Storm been going for a minute. So, hey, how you doing? So because of the book of Enoch, and then there are other parts of the Bible that gives that additional information as to why Origen and these rabbis thought about this. Origen also looked at how in Job, it says that when God is fussing Job out because Job is questioning why you let all this shit happen to me and ain't done nothing wrong, when he made that bet with Satan, with the Satan, this guy says, talks about that he laid the foundations of the earth. And he says that all the B'nai Elohim cheered, they clamored, they, rejoiced when the foundations of the earth were laid, right? So this rejoicing because the foundations of the earth are now being laid because the earth was in such disarray that now a foundation has been in place. So the B'nai Elohim rejoiced. And if there was a war in heaven, then these will be the B'nai Elohim that fought on the side of Michael against the Lucifer of the Bible, right? So they take that and suggest that, okay, and so Origen and these rabbis took that and said, okay, that's even more additional information that would say that there was a creation before the creation that made Adam and Eve or our modern day earth. Also in Ezekiel, it talks about how the cherubim, who was most beautiful and he was the music minister and all this kind of stuff, that he fought against God, that he fell from his high place. That even though it's an allusion to a king, but it's talking about that metaphor is speaking of how this whole war in heaven, this fall of Lucifer, fall of the evil one, the dragon, that it says in Ezekiel that he was in the garden, that this evil one, this cherubim, who fell down, was in the garden before Adam. So the earth that was created, there must have been an earth created beforehand that had a Garden of Eden that the cherubim was existing in before Adam. Now, of course, many Christians will say that, oh, they're really talking about the serpent at that point. Well, that doesn't work, because the serpent is created after Adam. When you read Genesis 2, it says that after Adam had been created, this guy was looking for a helpmate. So he created all the beasts of the fields and created all the animals, created all the birds and so on and so forth. And then in Genesis 3, that he said that the serpent that he had created was more cunning than all the other animals. So the serpent can't be whom Ezekiel is speaking of. So therefore, whom Ezekiel is speaking of, and the Eden that Ezekiel is speaking of, comes before the creation of the Garden of Eden, of the one of the version of the Bible we see, right? So those are some of the primary aspects of where Origen gets this idea of this gap, and this is where some of those rabbis in their midrashes talks about this gap, that there was an earth created beforehand. That in that earth that was created beforehand, when this guy created the B'nai Elohim, he created them with the knowledge of good and evil, and because they already had this knowledge of good and evil, this is why they rebelled, because God just spoke them into existence. But with the creation of Adam, he actually made Adam. The word that is used there to describe the making of Adam is an architectural term that is used in other parts of the Bible when they are making a building, where they describe how they made a building or made a tent or made something. So it's an architectural term. So, and when Adam was made, he was made in this garden and wasn't just spoken. He was formed by the clay, life breathed, soul breathed into him, and so on and so. The breath of God breathed into him, and man becomes a living soul. So all of these things happen according to the Bible, which is which they differentiate from the creation of the B'nai Elohim, that God just spoke them into existence. They had free will of knowledge of good and evil, but Adam and Eve had free will according to the story, but we know they really didn't. But without the knowledge of good and evil, so this guy was doing a redo. And we know the behavior of this guy is to do a redo quite often, right? And one of those redos come within the story of Noah, when he does his redo with Noah, because he wants to destroy everything, because he says, and we had this argument with another Christian before, where he was saying God wanted to kill all the Nephilim, but no. The Bible clearly states that the purpose of this God's flood was to kill all of mankind, because he clearly said that he wanted to destroy it because mankind had become evil, and every thought from his heart was evil. And so he wanted to destroy mankind because he realized even that was a mistake. So he made a mistake with the B'nai Elohim. Then he makes a mistake with the creation of man. So now he wants to destroy man and start over again, but he wants to start over with Noah. Now, this is very important to how it moves into racism within Christianity. It really started with Bruno Giordano in the 1570s. In the 1570s, Bruno Giordano wrote about how Noah, he talked about Noah, and others talk about Noah as well, but he talked about how Noah was made perfect. I think the word is tahum, but that word, however it is pronounced in the Hebrew, it doesn't just mean righteous, perfect in your righteousness, perfect in your walk, perfect in your heart, but it also means perfect in your body, your genome. And so Noah was perfect without any Nephilim blood in his genome. And then because of his perfection, this guy wanted to start over and hopefully create man from a perfect stock. Now, this turns into racism later on with Bruno Giordano, because Bruno Giordano then suggests that because Noah was made perfect, Noah was white. And God was trying to preserve the perfect whiteness that was Noah. And that the only reason that there are other races on the planet is because the African was created in that first creation before Adam. And that Adam was the restoration of the perfect genome for God to manifest his people. And so the African were not his people. He also went on to say that the African didn't have souls. Now, later Christian theologians in the 18th century, 17th and 18th century suggested that the Chinese were also these people who existed prior to it. But this began to bring about a lot of racism. It began to teach polygenism, which is the suggestion that God's creation of Adam and Eve and the Noah story and Shem and Japheth and all of them were God's perfect creation of whiteness, and that the other races came about because they were created before Adam and they are without souls. So it further pushed the idea of, because I know you guys have heard of that before, where Christianity used to teach that Black people didn't have souls. Right? The Mormons took that to the stage of saying that you had to be white and delightsome, and that if you were a Black person, you had to go through this transformational process. And in that transformational process, you don't become white, but you can still now go to heaven, but only go to this heaven to serve a white couple that has this special marriage where they're going to go and create a new earth again. And that process continues over and over again. And that you are only there as a servant. So you're a slave in their new heaven, their new creation. So many different variations of Christianity took hold of that idea that lasted, it still lasts to this day, but was very much popularized in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. You even had people in the 20th century who utilized this train of thought to convince people of white supremacy and nationalism by suggesting that Black people, Spanish people, Asian people, that none of them had souls, that they were the lesser forms of man. I did find one church that is still around today. Creation International, something like that is what they're called, where they have tried to spin that into saying that there was this gap, but the man that was created prior to that were the Neanderthals. The man that was, which I know that pisses off the white nationalists, the white supremacists, but the other types of Homo sapiens that existed before Homo superior, that it's not Homo, we're Homo sapien. Is it Homo? No, it's not Homo superior. That's Marvel. I just realized that's a Marvel statement. But that all those Homo erectus and all that were people that were created that somehow survived the chaotic warfare that occurred between God and the forces of Lucifer, as they say. So that's where that's where a lot of the racism was became supportive of things like the papal bull that was written by Pope Nicholas V in the late 1400s in order to enslave Black people and make them into Christians, but they could be made into Christians and still be enslaved because they didn't have a soul. They didn't have a soul. So it further perpetuated this idea. And I'm sure Giordano based some of that information on the fact of the papal bull that was written by Nicholas V. But all of this comes about because there's questions within the Bible, but of course there's parts of the Bible that would counteract some of the things that are said. Like I said about the serpent, Lucifer can't be the serpent if Lucifer was in the garden before there was the garden that Adam and Eve were in. It just simply doesn't work. If Noah and his children were all white and there was a purity, then we know based on DNA that white people cannot produce children of other colors. That is only something that happens from the Black woman down. And the lighter you get in the genome, the less you have the ability to produce a child of any different colors. So we know that scientifically that information just does not fit. We also understand that there were civilizations that existed prior to Adam, prior to the time frame of the Bible, which goes back to around 4700 BCE. So of course, if the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Minoans, the Asiatic cultures, all those was around before then. The sub-Saharan African cultures were around before then. The Mesoamericans were around before then. We have proof that people were walking around in America 25,000 years ago. We have proof that people were walking around Southern Africa as far back as 200,000 years ago. We know the Chinese see that their people migrated out of East Africa about 65,000 to 100,000 years ago. So we know scientifically that these stories, that this idea doesn't fit what we actually know in natural history. But this was very prominent in first century, second century CE, and was believed upon, and most of it was supported by the books of Enoch, which amazingly, as I said before, Christians still repeat to this day that this war in heaven actually happened. But how can you justify a war in heaven if you do not have the actual literature that states that a war in heaven actually occurred? You're just making shit up if you're believing that today, or you're believing in something that you will say the rest of it is heretical. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It is also the idea that giants were still in the land because of the book of Enoch. Because the only reason because Christians today will try to say that giants were still in the land because maybe the wives of Noah's 3 sons had Nephilim blood in them, although the Bible doesn't state anything remotely that would suggest that these women were Canaanites or that they were anything other than other Hebrew women, and that we don't know shit about them. So people just making this up. But the reason why the Bible says that there were giants in the lands before and afterwards is because the book of Enoch says that Og was tied to a mast, and Og was a giant. And so Og would have, I guess, got the poom poom of one of Noah's daughter-in-laws, or Noah's wife herself, or one of the descendants of the children that they have. So that is the biblical gap theory, that people try to utilize information that they had at the time to figure out why are there more people on the planet? Why are there the different races? Where did Cain get his wife from? Origen actually utilized this gap theory in order to explain Cain got his wife from the fact that there were other humanoids that was on the planet before Adam and Eve, and that's where his wife came from. Now, of course, this theory didn't stick in Christianity, because by the late 4th century, Augustine, who had immense power, Augustine of Hippo, had immense power within the Roman Church, even to the point where he was able to argue this against, I forgot the Roman emperor that he argued against, but he was able to argue against the Roman emperor who had converted to Christianity, but then went back to his previous religion. But he was able to argue this point against him, to the point where Augustine's ideas won over the church at the time. So this was being argued for centuries. And once the book of Enoch was determined to not be part of the Bible, not be legitimate, and that didn't happen until around 369, when the Bible was finally canonized. 365, 369, when it was finally canonized, is when the books of Enoch was then declared heretical, and so not being part of the Bible. Of course, other groups still accepted the book of Enoch, so they could still proliferate this gap theory, because they would have something that they consider scripture that would back up this gap theory. But modern Christianity today, no one should believe in this gap theory, but it leaves a bunch of questions, and that's why the gap theory was created. But we see also how the damage was done with this type of theology, that you can take writings in the Bible and convert them over to make them be or mean whatever the hell you want them to mean, to continue to pursue whatever your politics are, whatever your cultural preferences are, your cultural biases, your love and your hates can be proliferated by the Bible, because you can create a justification of it, and you can take the words of it and twist it into whatever meaning that you want it to have, right? You see, even if I was, you can do it in reverse. You can say that, well, all the people who were created beforehand, they were just creations. They don't even really matter. But Adam had to be black. Eve had to be black. Because you can't get black people out of white people, but you can get white people out of black people. So Eve had to be black, and therefore the first man that had a living soul was a black man. So black people have the living soul, and the blacker you are, the more of a living soul you have. So therefore, white people are the more soulless people, which is why they went around conquering and massacring people all over the world. And when we look at other groups like the Arabs, this is why they rejected this theory, because the Nabatean agriculture was a similar type of teaching. They just said that Adam's parents came from India and that he created agriculture and civilization, and they utilized this to try to justify their Babylonian belief during the 600s against the Arab teachings of Islam. So if you look up Nabatean agriculture, you'll find this storyline as well. The Sabaeans also dealt with it as well. So, but you can reverse this thing and say that, well, Noah had to be black. All you white people are the less soulless ones, because because the soul was breathed into the dark-skinned black Adam. Not the cartoon character, not the DC comic character, but Adam, black. And so Noah had to be black. And Noah's kids were black. His in-laws were black. And so, but from the black woman, when it comes to DNA, allows for Asians to be produced and every other race to be produced. So even as a black man, you can, if we were in charge, if black people wanted to be racist and be in charge of Christianity, you can take that same type of teaching and you can reverse it to then say that white people don't have souls. And then you can look at history and say, see, justification. Look at what they have done throughout the period of colonization. That's the bullshit of the Bible. That's the bullshit of a religion, is that you can take something like that and then make it be whatever you desire for it to be. And that's the main, if you don't get anything out of this whole little storyline, I hope that is the main thing that you get out of it, and why we still maintain our stance of deconstructing from this Bible, walking away from this religion, is because I can take this religion and I can make it be whatever the hell I desire for it to be. I can make it black supremacy. I can make it white supremacy. I can make it Asian supremacy. I can make it whatever supremacy I want. Adam came from India. Because his parents came from India and he started agriculture in that area and God spoke to him. Well, if he came to India, then he was, previous to that, he was a Brahmin. And so it was the Brahmin God that breathed life into Adam. So all people come from India. All people are Asian. Asians were the first people. Asian is the first people that have a soul. Nobody else has a soul. This is why we have chakras. We understand enlightenment. So you see, you can make it be whatever you want it to be. And that's the danger of this religion, because we see how it can be flipped in any direction that you want it to be flipped into. Right. So now you guys have heard of the gap theory. So you can't claim that you never heard it before. I know I'm probably going to have to re-explain this a bunch more times. Now, let me go ahead and say, I have a hard stop at 2 p.m. Central Time. I got to be somewhere by 3 o'clock. And I need to run my car through the car wash before I go there, because my car is filthy. It's been dusty as hell in San Antonio. So what do you guys think? I know you've been making comments. I haven't been reading the comments because I didn't want to get thrown off. So if you made a comment that I did and you want me to respond to it, let me know. If you want to come on the show, let me know that one too. Of course, certain people ain't coming on my show, but I would love to discuss this because I find this to be fascinating. Mother said that's why Black people created soul music. Y'all funny. Y'all funny. Y'all are funny. Right. Humans just evolved over a long time, right? Over a long time to live in the surroundings. White people just lost their melanin from their skin. Exactly. Exactly. There is no difference. The only difference you'll find is just that there's more home Neanderthal blood in them. So this is why the primary thought process is that Neanderthals were bred out more so than they were just destroyed by the Homo sapiens that was coming out of Africa. But it does lend the question more about. I was talking to my oldest daughter about evolution last night because she didn't fully understand it, so she was asking me questions about it. And there are still some things that we don't know, like when did Neanderthals branch off and live alongside the same time that Homo sapiens did? We like to think that Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and Homo erectus and Homo sapiens all had their time and then died out. Had their time and then died out. But oftentimes, many of these groups were in existence at the same time, and in some cases, they came into contact with one another. We know that the Homo sapiens out of Africa came in contact with Neanderthals as they migrated up through the Middle East into Europe. But the question is, how did Neanderthals get into Europe? I don't think anybody has found a sufficient answer to that. Where did they actually come from? And it'll be cool to know one day. Does it make Europeans any different? Makes them any better or less? No, it doesn't. Hell, if I was actually the more recent research on Neanderthal, they were some strong, fast motherfuckers. Might want a little some of that back. Uh, it's sad. To be honest, I'm kind of sad from man evolution perspective that we are the only hominids left. It would have been fascinating to see other hominids and their interbreeding from the scientific perspective. Yeah, it would have been. It would have been, especially when you look at some of the, like I was just saying, some of the aspects that they're starting to realize about Neanderthals, and that I think they said Neanderthal had thicker bones, which thicker bones give you denser muscles. Uh, that is an advantage. And of course, that is all adaptations to your surroundings. Got all them damn mountains and shit. Adaptation. Right. But those are some of the questions. Those are some of the things that I really would like to know. It would be great to, it would have been great to see the different hominids being around each other, how they interacted. I'm sorry. Are you legit saying Black people can't be racist, or have I misread you? Oh, you must be talking to somebody else, because Black people can be racist as hell. Black people can't be racist. A lot of people will say Black people can't be racist because in order to be racist, you have to be able to have a system of supremacy. But being racist or prejudiced is simply looking at another person and saying that they are less than because of their skin tone. And I know plenty of black people who are racist. Racism is just a mental disorder. And it's one that people gain, not born with. Yes, it's wild how deep racism goes. I've heard so many people try to explain away the Neanderthal DNA. Like, nope, they banged. That's why the DNA is there. Yeah, they had sex. It's like a lion meets a tiger. You have sex, and what do they call them? A ligra? Yeah, I think it's called a ligra. Not a ligra, but ligra. But there is no reason why we wouldn't think that Neanderthal and Homo sapiens could bang and have a child. And I know people try to separate prejudice and racism. They are the same thing. Prejudice and racism is the same thing. And you can be systematically racist towards white people, right? You can. I've seen neighborhoods, I've seen communities that it may not be on a grand scale, to such that it is practiced nationally, but honestly, there are certain parts of Atlanta, certain cities or sub-cities and counties in Atlanta that are controlled by black people, and them motherfuckers racist. I've sat into some county, what do you call them? When you go in there, so when you go and you're doing, sometimes when you go get a business license, you have to go before the commission, a board. And I've seen two people with the same goddamn own business. And I watch them black folks look at that white person and be like, nah, you ain't getting this license. And then like an hour later, here's a black guy with the same shit, and they give him that license. So, or give him his contract, his permits or whatever. So there are times when, so if you want to say it's only systematic, there are some systematic situations where you do have where black people can be racist. Racism has nothing to do with your color. It has something to do with your mentality. Yeah, so yeah, black people can't be racist. Black people certainly can be racist. I've had and have some family members that y'all may say is prejudice. I still tell them that they're racist. Anytime they say something that's out of pocket, I'm like, you being racist. You being racist. And some of it is experiential. Because I have family members who grew up during Jim Crow, they just simply don't trust white people. It doesn't matter who you are, they just not going to trust white people at all. But the Bible certainly promotes racism. We are not talking about what I want to talk about, but it's okay. I don't like y'all sometimes. What about G?
What's up, man? Okay, so I just want to quickly speak. I definitely want to speak just about like when you go to certain counties. I do disagree with you. Is it that when, okay, so if there's a black county, considering the history here in America, is it then racism when the overwhelming majority of the other side has locked you out of different institutions? Is that then racism if when you have your own tribal and you look out for your tribalism, like your people more as a result of the other tribes not allowing you to participate or not allowing you to get the same rights as the overwhelming majority of the population? I don't see how that is racism, because I don't think that's something that we would do if it wasn't for it's kind of like what the right is saying. Why do you have HBCUs if they're trying to say that's reverse racism? You shouldn't have a school for all black colleges. But when we was trying to have colleges and institutions or try to go there, we couldn't go to yours. So that's where I kind of have a strong disagree with you on that. That black people can be the reason why we separate prejudice and racism, because yes, you can have a prejudice for several different reasons. But I don't think that black people would just be like, oh, because you're white and because your skin color. No, it's a consequence of the socialism as to what we live in, as to why we have these different institutions to ourselves. We don't have
Mhm.
these separate institutions because we ourselves wanted to have these separate institutions. So that's where I disagree with you on.
And I understand the thought process of the cause and effect that creates that
Mhm,
mentality, but
mhm.
when you boil it down to its roots, you're simply denying a person access to something based on their race, which makes it racism.
Is it just race? Because you know one thing, I stand on the American descendant of slavery type of political thing. I don't really think because there's something called lineage here, right? Did we call when the Irish and the Italians came to the Americas during the 1860s and 1867 Homesteads Acts, and were not allowed to participate? Now they share the same phenotypes as all of the other Northern Europeans. It wasn't their skin color as to why they were discriminated. It was their ethnicity, it was their lineage. So
Right.
when you deal with, so yeah, so go ahead. So when you deal with black people in America, can't speak for anywhere else in the world. Those of us who are American descendants of slavery, those of us who were here before the 1965 Immigration Acts, is that I don't think that's racism as that is, it's like, okay, for lineage purposes. So I don't think like I get what you might be saying that it might not be a moral correct thing to do, but I don't really think that that is racism when you have a dominant society over one that's locking you out. And then like when you say black neighborhoods, let's just be honest. We might run certain counties and zones, we don't run states and cities. So we don't so is it racism when the port when you go to certain parts of Atlanta and it's nothing but Mexicans and they run everything? Or like you in San Antonio, which I could tell you all about that. There's a lot of that practice with the white Hispanic Mexican, which you're gonna learn by living
Mhm.
there long enough, that they practice that. So would you then say they too are racist as well?
Yep, they
Okay,
are.
at least you're fair. At least you're fair, even though I might disagree with you.
Yeah.
At least you're fair in that aspect. But I still don't. They might. I get what you're saying. They might be able to practice a small slither of an institution of, I guess, not really, because you really don't have. I
It's
guess you.
the
Yeah.
size doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
This is
Right.
an instance where size doesn't matter.
Right.
If
Right.
the reason and rationale that you're telling a person or denying a person access to something uh, is based on their race, then it's racism. Is
But
and
so
when
the
it's
next.
done and when it's done, whether it's done at a national level, city level, county level, or even at the
Mhm,
neighborhood level, it is
mhm.
still has become systematic because you're doing it over and over again, and it's part of the system of how you govern. So when you go to, and I hate to put the name out there, but when you go to Lithonia, Georgia, the
Mhm.
city and county commissioners of Lithonia, Georgia, they practice racism.
I mean, I know a lot of people that do live out there in Lithonia. See, I've never been out there yet. So you're telling me that Lithonia is one place that where white nationalists and KKK. So you saying that Lithonia is? I'm not saying you're saying that. So it would take for the federal government to roll up on Lithonia like they do in D.C. and Illinois. So you're in other words, because when you deal with because when I think about that, it's like I can't. I'm not saying I don't believe you, but I just find it really hard to kind of conceptualize that any city in Black America, in the United States, that is, would be allowed to,
Mhm.
especially with this political climate, is it really racism or is it that it's self-preservation because you are not allowed to integrate with of the rest of the state in ways? I don't know
We
about that.
we
I,
can we can try to phrase it as in some way of supporting your community or building your community,
I,
but in Lithonia, Georgia, over the last 10 to 15 years, they have been systematically getting rid of Asian and white businesses. And and when I say Asian, that also includes the Indians because Indians is considered
right.
Asian. But
Hindustani, Southeast, gotcha. Hmm.
they have been systematically getting rid of those businesses in favor of black businesses doing the exact same thing because they are, and black people will see it as a good thing because we've been we've had so much done against us. And so black people are supporting it, but they've been systematically getting rid of all those businesses and only allowing for black businesses to be there. They've also put things in place to stop white people from buying the and Asians and Spanish from buying the housing in that area. And they are only giving preference to black people to buy the housing in that area. And it's solely based on race. Now, like I said, most black people in those areas are supportive of it in the same way that you are, and because they're looking at it from the standpoint of we were denied so much, and Lithonia government is saying we're doing this because we want to increase black home ownership and black businesses in our community, and so that we can grow financially to try to supersede what is going on a larger scale. But and even I was supportive of that when I put two of my businesses in Lycoming. I was very
Hmm.
supportive of it
Hmm. Hmm.
because it benefited me, so I was supportive of it. But at its core, just at its core, whether it's needed or not, I do think it's needed. But at the same time, at its core, I recognize it for what it actually is. It is still racism, even though I'm supportive of how it's being done. And that's the same thing, like my wife just posted on YouTube. That's the same thing that Foresight was doing in north of Alpharetta. Like
Hmm.
you can go to the Foresight now, sort of, but your happy ass wouldn't have went to Foresight when I was working in Atlanta. That's the place that kicked Oprah out, if you remember.
Hmm.
Right?
I do. I do. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Foresight did the same thing, but they just was doing it for white people. And we will easily say that that's racism, right?
Yes, we would. We would. It's just like okay,
So
because
when
especially
somebody else
yeah.
do it, it's racism.
Right. And here's the thing, and it's not that no problem with you, but then it's like, okay, just like with the HBCUs, have you I gotta send you those reports when Asians and whites are complaining about, okay, we want to be able to go to HBCUs to the same rates or as I guess as black people, right? But then it's the thing is it's just like okay, how is it then that this is what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily completely disagreeing. I just would want it. I guess I'm giving this context so we can see, like, okay, how many more institutions? So if we're gonna battle racism, are we gonna deal with the 13% of the population that is having the little small slithers of
Mhm.
institutionalism, or are we going to deal with the overwhelming, like the overwhelming majority of people of color here are not Black American? They come here with the ideals based off of colonialism of Black Americans and thus start executing racism. Like I'm from New Orleans. You heard it, as diverse as it is. You don't see now. We might live together, but there's a lot of nepotism and very select breeding. You're gonna see a lot of Caribbeans, but you won't see Haitian business hire Black Americans. Even here in your city in Atlanta, you see the Guatemalans, the Venezuelans, the
Yeah.
Chinese, and the Japanese working together. But what they have decided not to do now with their racism is not include Black Americans within any business, without anything. So my only thing is, yes, because my perspective, of course, I'm not, prejudiced or racist, xenophobic, but I can't sit here and be like, okay, for myself. I'm not telling you. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I just have to deal with racism as a whole generality. When in this country, now, not for everyone else, that the bulk and the blunt of everyone else, because see, everyone else, people of color and white people of color, they come here to participate in racism. And quite often, it is the American descendant of slavery that they're coming here to execute that. So I'm just saying, as a Black American, I would be more concerned with the other people of color who are coming here, especially Hispanics and Latinos who are European descent, who also often classify as white on their paper throughout the census more often than others. That is where racism and prejudice is more prevalent then I would argue against you than what's going on in Lithonia and Forsyth.
No, I agree with you. In all
Mhm,
honesty, I
mhm,
agree with
mhm,
you that that is where the fight should be had, and that
mhm,
the xenophobia or nationalism or ethnicity,
mhm, mhm.
favoritism that goes on is problematic as well.
Yeah,
I
because
agree with
often we get the
you.
blunt out of
Let
all
me finish.
Americans.
I gave
Yeah,
you 5 goddamn minutes.
my bad, my bad.
Your long-winded ass. So I agree with you. Do not misunderstand the fact that there is black racism. To me, saying that it needs to be stamped out or be focused on, it does not. Well, all racism does need to be stamped out, but I am not saying that it needs to be focused on to the same degree that white racism is done, that Hispanic and any other group is doing it, and that black people seem to be on the lower end of the totem pole in most instances. Uh, just like in South Africa, when blacks took over in South Africa, oh, they started taking land back and shutting white folks out. It was a form of racism. It is a form of racism, but they are reclaiming what was theirs that was stolen from them. So therefore, we put the justification in. So when we practice uh, neighborhood solidarity, uh, it's valid. We need to simply because we're up against a system that is going to shut us out, and so we need to formulate and build our own communities and support our own communities. And part of doing that is to be racist because you have to go and look. You talked about Caribbean people. There's a Jamaican restaurant right there. There's a soul food restaurant. I'm gonna go to the soul food restaurant before I go to the Jamaican restaurant because that Jamaican restaurant will not hire black Americans.
Right.
So we have to practice it. I'm gonna go to this black man decided to open up a Chinese restaurant. I'm gonna go to the black man's Chinese restaurant, and I'm not gonna go to the Asian Chinese restaurant because I'm going to support the black man because we are at the bottom. And if we ever want to defeat the systematic racism, black people have to grow economically in order to do so. So I agree. I'm just boiling it. When I say that we are, it's possible we can. And in some instances, we are. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Well, it is, all racism is wrong, but it's a necessary evil. Put it that way.
When you say black, right? Because here's the thing, I don't, me personally, when I
I'm
see
talking about
everyone
Black
that's me,
Americans.
when you say black, because I understand, I don't like one, because when I say this, black people can be racist to other black people. Here's the problem with that statement. Okay, a Nigerian that just immigrated here 20, 30 years ago, or 10, 15 years, or Caribbean,
Mhm.
yes, they are most likely to be racist because the truth be told about it is, if you talk to anyone from the continent of Africa, they don't find out what blackness is until they get here. Same thing with Caribbeans, right? Because there's no such
Mhm.
thing as a black Nigerian in Nigeria. There's no such thing as a black Cameroonian in Cameroon. There's no such thing as a black Jamaican in
Yep.
Jamaica.
Got it.
So the reason why like I said, it more sounds like to me of tribalism.
Yeah.
That's the when you
What?
deal with that, a lot of times, often, and I'm gonna be quiet, is just that when you say black, when not you're saying this, when people say, well, black people are racist toward other black people, no, you gotta look at that because we did this stupid flat blackness thing in this country, which was used more as a contagion, as a protectness of whiteness. Um, Nigerians don't see themselves as black until they get here. Continental Africans. So, and then when they also buy into the propaganda and everything that is fed about Black Americans, they don't see the genophenotype. They don't give a fuck about kinky hair and melanin and all that shit. As a matter of fact, other people of color, they pick and choose when they want to wear blackness. So when they're in the hood and in black spaces, I'm black. Same thing with the so-called Afro Latinos. That's not a thing. They do this thing, well, yeah, I'm black when I'm around you. But when we in mixed company, oh, me no black. They go to referring to their national origin.
Yeah.
So I think because see, race, I'm not saying colorism and all those things don't affect other people in their country that they come from, but The institution of color was saying black and white by classification in class. It's something when they get here, it has a different exclusivity. We know
Right.
that this country does not, because if it was just about skin color, then the brown skin, dark skin Hindustanis, East Indian communist people wouldn't be able to come here and do as well as they did. So it isn't solely just off of genophenotype as it is national origin and ethnicity.
Okay. So to cut the circle into a straight line,
Mhm.
all you had to say was there is a difference between race and ethnicity or nationalism.
Well, no, yeah, but
Most,
most people don't understand that. That's why
most,
most people don't understand that. That's why I'm just going that way. Because if you say that, they just think blackness and they think Negro genophenotypes and kinky hair, and they
you
think
know,
it's in America. We're taught that.
you know what? If you was coming to the meetup, I put tape over your mouth.
My bad.
God, come on. Yes. When people come to America, they still hold on to their cultural consciousness, and they don't separate themselves by race in the same way we do when they come to America. Well, one of the things I've learned when I travel to these other countries, though, is that if you go to Mexico, they will separate themselves based on their perception of race is,
Mhm.
because Afro Mexicans are at the bottom
Mhm.
and are treated foul. You go to
Mhm.
Puerto Rico, and black Afro Puerto Ricans are treated as a lower caste. And the same thing
Mhm.
in India. Sub Indians who are normally more dark, they're treated foul because of their darkness.
Mhm.
So they still project that type of racism in their own country. It's just when they come to America, because they are not in their country, they tend to gravitate towards their own likeness of culture over their likeness of skin color. And then now it's culturally based. I'm Indian, you a black American, or you white American, or whatever American, I'm Indian.
Mhm.
So yes, I agree that that happens as well, but race is the overall structure, and below that you can start getting into all the other different types of ethnicities and tribalisms and all those sorts of things. But uh,
Yeah, well, I ain't gonna hold you too long. I just I said, okay, finally, we have something we kind of disagree on, and I kind of wanted to have that because I just have an issue from a political standpoint. I just have issues with those statements because everyone doesn't disaggregate race like that. When you say that, they just automatically, most people in this country, we're taught to just refer to skin color. Now, I will say this. Yeah, you might say they're black Puerto Ricans, but they're African descent. They're not really gonna. I get you're saying by the skin color and the features, but they're not thinking blackness. They're thinking by okay, a caste, if you will, by skin color, like how they do in London and everything. They're not really thinking this general conciseness of blackness as they are dealing with colonialism. That okay, obviously, if you have features of a more what they consider inferior class, which yes, is true enough, I do agree with you there. It's often darker skin, but I don't. But the way that it's conceptualized here, it isn't just that flat as everyone else. Like if you see, I've seen it myself. A Nigerian, I have a Nigerian and a Cameroon friend. Like you and I could connect as Black Americans, and we might. There's a certain connection and culture paradigm that we have because of everything that's in this history. But that Cameroonian, it's not going to look at that Nigerian and be like, "You're my brother." That's not how
no,
that's going to work. As a matter, in Mexico, you got the Puerto Ricans and the
yeah,
Dominicans that's trying to immigrate there. They don't give a fuck that yeah, that they had the same Spaniard conquistador history and colonization. They are still going to practice which you might say is racism to a certain degree, but I think to a certain degree it's tribalism. They're still going to practice that form of that. They don't care that you share the language. Hell, they don't care that you might even share the same phenotype. Same thing with the Korean War. The North and South Koreans didn't give a fuck that they are all closely connected and mongoloid. Because of nationalism, government,
it,
and stuff like that, that was more
it's,
important. So that would be
it's,
more racism.
it's the same thing though. if and I'm gonna make this last statement, then I'm gonna let somebody else come on.
Go ahead, go ahead.
But it's the same thing. So when I lived in Europe, right,
Mhm.
the the Germans, now it's kind of weird, but the Germans, you had the Germans who they didn't give a shit about white Americans. They actually disliked white Americans more than anybody else because they were like, we don't care if you're white, you're not German. France is really big on this. A French black person will get more kindness than a American white person in France
Mhm. Mhm.
because most countries it's about their nationality. It ain't real. It's nationality first, and then it's race.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when you go to, um, so when you go to some of these countries, you'll see that Americans will group together, live together, create their own communities in the same way that people come here and do the same thing, and then within their community, they will then practice their racism within their own community. Right. So the same thing you see here, and you were talking about in Mexico and all these other places, the same thing happens when Americans go to other countries as well. You know,
And I'm gonna just say one more thing, and I'm gonna be quiet.
you got
The
1 minute.
the only reason why, because there isn't a reciprocity here, like globally, and like, okay, meaning that it's a problem when other people who, yeah, you might share the same genophenotype as me or appearance, but you get to come here and then stand in representation of who I am in government. You get to stand in places for things that, okay, during affirmative action, I'm sorry, civil rights, your ancestors and all that wasn't here during that time. But because of this intervention of flat blackness that was used by white supremacy to muddy the waters, I have an issue with that as a Black American because, like I said in another live, there isn't a mass immigration of us. They're going to their countries. We don't want to massively, not maybe now, but for the last, there isn't this same beneficiary. I can't, there's nowhere in Africa, no matter how dark my skin is, there's nowhere I can go and be able to stand in there and say, hey, because of how we look, you get to then acquiesce in the culture and you get to be part of the country in the same way. So for me, that's why that nuance is very important because it's just a one-way street. And I appreciate you for letting me have a time.
All right, no problem. But I will say that when other people come to this country and then they get in positions that we have not gotten into, my even though it's messed up, I look at us and say that we take it for granted. We don't do what we need to do in order to get
Oh,
there.
I will disagree with you so hard there, but go
No,
ahead.
this is why we don't because and one of the things that I recognize is that when you get the person who comes from Nigeria and comes to America and then they establish themselves is not the average Nigerian. The average Nigerian is sitting in their country bitching and moaning and complaining and not doing what's necessary for them to achieve what they say that they want to achieve because they think that the government is supposed to do this or the government is supposed to do that. And so the ones that we see come over here are the very few percentage that have more of a zeal to get shit done. Uh, we have become too damn complacent, especially after integration, thinking that shit should be fair and we should not have to work twice as hard to get to where we want to be. And that's one of the reasons why we get mad at immigrants when they come over and they get shit. But there are programs out there that are just as beneficial to a black person to be able to achieve. But people in country, and this is everywhere I've been in the world, and I've been to about 34, 37 countries. But everywhere in the world, the people who are native to that land, they they always seem to lag behind a large portion of the immigrants who come into that land. So whoever is on the bottom in that land, they lag behind the immigrants. But those immigrants are a special breed of people who save for 10 years in their country to come to this country, save for another 10 years, and then they do something, right? That's the average way it happens.
But
And
also, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I said I'm having the last word because
Bye.
I'm gonna let somebody
Yeah,
else get
have
up
the
there.
last word. We're going to talk about this because I strongly disagree with you, and I can show you the data for that. Because, okay, if a person that, like Kamala Harris's people, right?
I said I
It
was
is.
having the
Oh,
last
bye,
word.
bye,
Bye.
bye.
I gotta let other people get on. Today is a shorter show than normal. Ah, I love having IG on here. The old long-winded ass. But it's a shorter show today. I gotta leave at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time frame, so I only have like an hour and a half left. So I'm gonna try to get other people on here because I know me and IG can probably go over and over. We can go through this and not even be bored for probably hours. So I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to be fair today. Jay Money,
Hey, what's up? How you doing, champ?
how you doing, man?
Yeah, everything good, man. I was just, wondering what's the biblical gap theory? Like, I was just looking at the screen. Like, I joined in late. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It's
I
okay.
decided to join the panel because I saw the link. You know what I mean?
So the biblical gap theory, I can't go through the whole thing again because that's a 30-minute spiel.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
the biblical gap theory, which was pushed really hard by Origin back in the second century, basically says that there were people who were there was a creation of the earth before the creation of the earth that made Adam and Eve. That based on the Bible's first Genesis 1 and 2, where it talks about where it says that in the beginning when God began to create, it's not in the beginning. When God began to create, um, the earth was in chaos, it was void, and then his face was over the waters. That a theory propagated based on that and support of other places like in Job and Ezekiel and with the story of Noah and Genesis 3. I mean, Genesis 2. No, it's 3. Genesis 2 and 3. That there was a pre Adamic creation. And that pre Adamic creation then was misused by initially by people like Bruno Giordano, who was able to utilize that to say that Black people were inferior and soulless. And throughout the 16th, 17th, and 18th, and 19th, 20th century, that theory was continuously utilized to say that all people other than white people were born without souls and that they are inferior to man, inferior to white people.
Mm.
So, and
Mm.
basically the main thing that I wanted people to understand from this one is the fact of how the Bible can be twisted to promote any type of political or cultural bias that you desire to have.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you basically saying scripture can like was twisted to like create that notion about white people over everybody.
Yeah, because like what Bruno and this other French guy, his name Isaac, I cannot say his last name right. It's Ferreri. I should be able to, but anyway, what they was pushing was that the fact that uh, the reason why Cain was able to get a wife because the the war in heaven happened because of they were following the book of Enoch. The war in heaven happened, and then what remained on earth was a hominid that was not Adam. And then when God decided to restart the earth again, He created Adam and Adam and Eve, and then they had their children, and that's where Cain was able to get his wife from. And then they pushed that later on to say that this is also where Africans come from. This is where Chinese come from. And they can't, they don't have souls. And this is why the Mormons were saying that Black people can only be slaves to the white people when they go to heaven. Is
And
because
this is the book of Enoch says this?
the book, yes, actually, the book of Enoch is where the war in heaven comes from. Like there is nothing else in the Bible that says that there's a war in heaven other than people like Paul and in the book of Jude where they're quoting Enoch to suggest that there was a war in heaven. Yeah. And that war in heaven happened before the creation of Adam. This is why Ezekiel says that the devil was a beautiful cherubim who was in Eden before Adam. So Enoch kind of filled the gap of the question, because most of the time people just think Enoch is just telling a story about Enoch and gives you more information about the Nephilim. But it also fulfills the war in heaven and a pre-earth creation, pre-Adamic earth creation.
So basically, so then that's like implying that the book of Enoch is not an apocryphal text after all, like it's scripture, it's like it's valid.
No, the Book of Enoch is still just fan fiction that was written around second century BCE. But to first and second century Christians, all the way up to the fourth century, fourth and fifth century, Enoch was heavily in rotation and believed to be scripture. Like Enoch doesn't fall out of favor of being scripture until around 369, and that's when Augustine argued against it vehemently to the point where it fell off.
You know, it's funny how that story adds up so well with like it explains, like you said, fills in the hole.
Say that again, you're a little muffled.
It's funny how the story of Enoch adds up with, like, it fills in the holes, like you said. You know, that was I didn't know that about the Book of Enoch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just hearing this for the first time. I always was taught that was not, you know, don't listen to that. Like, that's not real. So
yeah. So you have some books that were written about people, about small characters in the Bible, and those books are written at such a late stage in order to explain many of the questions people were having about what the Bible, what scriptures they were already believing. Right. So when they had the question of, well, why are there still giants on the earth if Noah's flood supposedly killed everybody and only Noah's family was still alive? How did giants still be there for David to fight Goliath, right?
Yeah.
Well, Enoch, in the Book of Enoch, they wrote in that the giant Og was tied to the mast of the ark. So he was too big to go inside the ark, so they tied him to the mast of the ark so that he would be able to survive. They don't, Enoch doesn't get into who Og had sex with to create his whole city and a whole bunch of people and that sort of thing, and so that the Philistines can have giants. But just by saying that Og was tied to the mast, okay, giants are still on the earth.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is, I've always looked at scripture, I'm not gonna lie, like something that is a control tool, you know, like a weapon people use to control the masses, because they say Moses was the first one to write scripture. He wrote the Torah and all that stuff. So at the time of him, like when I checked, like, you know, I did like research of this time frame, and there was already kingship. Like, people understood what it was to be a ruler, you know, to have a plight, like, you know what I mean? Like, society was different back then. So he knew what it was to desire leadership and followers and had power. And to my knowledge, then he like killed somebody before, like when he was like younger and he got like exiled or something like that. I remember hearing something like that when reading something like that when I was reading up on him.
You dying, you going low, you going in and out.
Yeah.
Kind of
So sorry about that. You can hear me better?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was saying was I don't know if it sounds to me like the biblical scriptures are just a way to control the masses. You know what I'm saying? Like, before, the world's standing religion was like the Enuma Elish, I think it was, or prior text. You know, the world was following that, or Catholics. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't whatever Moses was kicking that eventually became Christianity, the Old Testament, the New Testament. Then when I see the Old Testament God, I say, you know, he's so in contrast to what Jesus is, you know, the characteristics and how Jesus was. Like, the Old Testament God would kill you for not practicing the Sabbath. The Old Testament God would tell you to stone your son if he's disobedient. You understand what I'm saying? That's not how Jesus gets down. You know, that from what I was able to tell, from what I pulled from the New Testament. Now, I've always felt like, you know, like I said, scripture is something to control you and like control your fear and put your fear and your love and keep you in line. You see what I'm saying? Because it's giving you a destination beyond this life. So we all wonder what comes after this. So if I'm giving you a word and I'm telling you, hey, look, God spoke directly to me. Now you believe me, you understand, you're gonna put your power and faith in me. You would give me your life because you think you know where your life is headed to afterwards because of me. I control you basically at that point. So
I agree.
that's all I thought. That's all I ever really look to is scripture to this day. You know, that's why they fighting in Israel because of scripture. You know, so I don't know. I mean, I do believe in a creator though. I can't say that I don't believe in a creator or a savior. I do. I do think that makes logical sense, putting all scripture aside, because The fact is, we are here. This is a fact. So something produced this. I don't pretend to do what scripture does and try to put a lid on it or a title on it and tell you, hey, it was God and this is his name and this is how I went. There was, I don't pretend to tell you that, but I do believe that something produced existence, because these bubbles and cosmos and universes that's popping up everywhere that we finding because of these new telescopes we sending up, that's not, that don't just happen. You understand what I'm saying? That's already proof enough, putting scripture aside.
Now,
And
that's not
yeah,
necessarily proof. That's proof of nature. Just how nature works.
yeah,
Like
that's what
we're
I'm saying.
discovering more and more that that's just how nature works. That's how bombardment of gravity and all these other forces that are in the universe work. It doesn't justify and mean that there's a creator of it, simply
Mhm.
because we don't know everything to know about gravity or everything to know about how a planet is created. But the more and more we find out, we can find the natural process by which it occurs.
I
But
think,
it's
yeah,
I don't see the logic. It's not logical to me. It can be logical to you, but it's just not logical to me that there has to be a creator in order to do it. And certainly, it to me is not logical that there has to be someone outside myself to save myself. Because who am I saving myself from? What am I saving myself from?
well, I mean, the creation to save itself, for life to keep reproducing and keep happening, like that. It doesn't maybe have to be literal, like the way they say. It could be something built within our genome that stops us from, like look how we're located in the right place in our galaxy. You understand what I'm saying? It's almost like a whole bunch of sloppy Legos, and all of a sudden this perfect existence comes out of it. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah. But it's not perfect. One, it's not perfect. 90%, 98% of the things on this planet is designed to kill you. And most of the planet truly is uninhabitable for humans. If you think about it, every other animal and plant on this planet, the way that it is born to live and thrive to a certain degree within the ecosystem, within the ecosystem. We have to build things in order to live in Canada, right? We can't just live in
Mhm.
Canada butt ass naked.
That's right.
So most of the earth is not habitable for us. So it's not perfect for us. And then in the areas that things are perfect for, everything from a small ass mosquito to a flea up to a lion, tiger, and a bear is designed to kill us. So we're not in a perfect situation. And Earth is not special. We have found over 400 planets that are in the habitable zone of a star.
True.
So, and then we can see the progression of how habitable zones are created because in I don't know what the time frame is, but I'm just gonna throw a number. This is not a perfect number, but in 4 or 5 billion years, Earth won't be in a habitable zone for life on Earth to exist anymore. Not the kind of life that we understand.
Hmm.
So, and that's a process of nature as our sun grows and gets bigger, and one day will become a red giant. And when it does become a red giant, it'll actually swallow,
Supernova.
right? But it'll swallow the Earth before it even becomes it goes supernova. So that is not perfection. Perfection would be that the sun is made, it stays the same size as it is, the earth stays in its habitable zone, and we're able to be here for all eternity if that was the original plan based on the Genesis story. That would be the original plan, but that's just scientifically incorrect. So there's no perfection. And then we constantly being bombarded by meteorites and things of that nature. Thankfully, they all been small in the last 12,000 plus years, but not all of them. You have the one that hit Russia that it hit way out in Siberia somewhere. If that had hit over a city like New York, all of New York would have been destroyed, right? Like all of them you got like 8 million people in the city,
Yeah.
all of them gone. So we
Mm.
just lucky at sometimes, and other times we're not.
I
So it's
mean,
not
that does make some good points. My thing is that you know, I was seeing something the other day about just that, like the galaxies and like the rate of expansion of the universe and how just natural processes occur, like these natural forces, like you said, occur. Black holes occur, meteors fly, All of that stuff happens. It's like a big system, right? But they said that if the rate of expansion was just off by a little bit, like point something, that
Hmm.
we wouldn't even be able to live today, like life
Yeah,
as
we
it
would.
is now. You see what I'm saying? So it's like even just that alone, that means that it was, to me, that shows some sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say a conscious, because like I said, I don't want to quantify whatever essence made us. You understand what I'm saying? That's not something for us to fathom. I always say life is made, life is meant to be experienced, not explained. But we curious, we want to know. So that's why we ask questions, but that's why you don't know what really happens until you experience death. You can have all the near death experiences you want, and you could come back saying the same story and whatever. It could sound all the same. It's kind of like people who do DMT and they see these same frogs and same creatures. Who knows what you're really going to, but that's not actual death. You don't know until you experience it. You see, bring me back somebody who passed a long, long time ago. And they've been gone. They've been disposed, their body, whatever, they gone. They remains are somewhere. Have that person come back to me and tell me their experience. Can't do that. You see what I'm saying? Because you have to experience that to know. You see, life is meant to be experienced more so than explained, because that's why no matter how much we find out, no matter how many telescopes we put out, we always gonna hit a wall to our understanding. Like recently, okay, we thought the James Webb telescope is gonna show us something crazy. We're gonna get a lot of answers, and all we did was get a lot more questions because we found things we were not supposed to find. Like
Well,
we,
wait, why would you say
yeah,
we're not supposed to find them?
because
That doesn't make sense.
no, I'm gonna tell you why. Because they said that it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist based on the age of the universe at the time. They found galaxies, like because when you see those little dots from all the way far away, those are whole entire systems. Those whole entire
Mhm.
galaxies. You understand what I'm saying? So they're saying that they found some that were as big as the Milky Way galaxy is today, that took 13 point something billion years to make, but it's at a point in time where it's only 500 million years old, the universe. So they're like, how is this possible that we're seeing these universes here that are huge, like what we are now, the Milky Way galaxy is now, but it can't be. Like this took billions of years to get the size we are now. You know
Right.
this 13 point something billion years. So how is it that we're looking back at a period of time and you know how telescopes work. I know you know. So like the
Yeah.
further you back you look, the earlier the thing. Like, it's like rewinding time when you look that far back. You understand what I'm saying? So they're looking that far back and they're saying that they're seeing galaxies and bubbles that are there that are as big as the Milky Way galaxy, which took this long to make, so they shouldn't be there. That shouldn't exist. Now, there could be a reason for that. There probably can't be a reason for that. But my point is that no matter what we do, we're always going to hit a wall and a new thing to understand because we can't understand everything. Life is not meant to be understood that way. It's meant to be experienced.
Now, I agree with you that life is meant to be experienced. And to me, part of the experience is to hit that wall because
Exactly.
to me, it's a beautiful thing that when we have our mathematical concepts of the universe and then we're out looking at the universe and then we say, well, damn, the math ain't mathing. So
Hmm.
it inspires us to create. It inspires us to think, to go deeper than our preconceived notions and to challenge ourselves to be better and know more. It's the same way that when I think it was John Dee's uh,
Yeah.
calculations didn't work out
Yeah.
for what I forgot what he was propagating, and I'm not even sure it was John Dee's. It was somebody like that, but or no, not John Dee's. Shoot, I can't think of the dude's name. The one who invented calculus. Uh,
Mm.
but when he came up with calculus at the same time that somebody else did too. But he came up with calculus because the preconceived ideas and preconceived we know this didn't fit. So he had to come up with a whole new math
Mm.
to be able to figure out what the deal is.
Mm.
So I think that's part of the experience of life to look out into the universe and say, oh, wait, if the universe is supposed to be this old, but then we see that there are galaxies that are younger. And then we see that these galaxies aren't expanding in the same direction that that our universe is expanding. That is what caused people to look and say, you know what? There is not just the one singularity of our known universe, but there are singularities within singularities. This is why there's a 50% chance that the galaxy Andromeda will, in 10 billion years, but there's a 50% chance that the Andromeda galaxy and our galaxy will collide and form a brand new mega galaxy. Isaac Newton, thank you, Malcolm. That was Isaac Newton who came up with calculus. But that, and see, to me, that just, okay, there are singularities that happen within universes, within our universe, and there's singularities that happen outside of our universe that we don't even know about. And the results of that is that galaxies are not, you know, because when something explodes, everything goes out from the center point, right?
Facts.
But now you're saying that, oh, if we exploded here and then over here, when we were already, you know, 12.5 billion years old, another one happened, and in the 500,000 years from that one happened, it created this other galaxy, and that's why these galaxies are expanding in the different direction. To me, that just that's the experience. That's a beautiful experience.
That's
of
what I'm
life.
saying.
If you're interested in it, I need you to hold on for a second. You can talk. I drink a bunch of water. I drink a bunch of water this morning.
No problem. Yeah, I was just gonna. That was all I was really calling for anyway. I want to give the other gentleman who's waiting on the panel a chance to speak. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I'll definitely tune in, man. You know, I'm a new listener. I just subscribed, so you'll probably hear from me again, man. I'll wait till you come back. You know what I'm saying?
Excuse me for that.
Yeah. No, it's all good, man. I was just saying, I'm gonna, you know, I was gonna step down so I could let the other gentleman get a chance to speak. But you know, it was a good convo, man. I'm a new listener, and you know, I subscribe. You'll hear from me again. You have a
Appreciate
blessed
you.
one, all right?
You have a great one as well.
You too. Peace.
All right, peace. Let's see. Oh, hell, the other person jumped. I think Al was. I guess Al had to get out of the box. Al was in the box, baby. Yeah, I know I do one person at a time, and so you know we got to do one person at a time on here. This must be the day of people coming back who ain't seen it in a while, because I saw somebody else over here on TikTok ain't seen it in a while. They came. Voiceover, how you doing? Great to see you back. Great to see you if you're still there. Now, but I do agree and understand what he's saying. I mean, life is to be experienced, and nobody knows what the hell is going to happen after you leave this planet. No matter what people say, no matter what you believe, you have no idea what's going to happen when you die of this existence and come into a new existence. And so you should be out here exploring. You should be here loving life and enjoying life, because you have no guarantees of any damn thing after this life. This is why things, and the whole concept, even though they've used this gap theory in order to further along racism, the true realization is that there is no such thing as race. And the fact that we have created systems in order to hate each other, in order to take advantage of each other, is ridiculous to me. The fact that we have nationalities, the fact that we have ethnicity, that we have tribes, all those things to me are are on such a low mental vibration. But I know that we have to, and now don't get me wrong, I know we have to deal with it. I know that everybody's not there. I know that our systems of life and government and all these things are not there, so that we can, actually get the best out of our human existence, get the best out of our experience. I mean, imagine, if you will, if the world didn't participate in any kind of racism or nationalism or tribalism or ethnocentricity. How further along would we be in our state of humanity? How further along would we be technologically wise? How many diseases that people still deal with today that we would not be dealing with because more energy will be put towards making life existence better, right? I sent my wife this video yesterday, and in China they developed this. They got the little robotic thing that you put around your waist and put on your knees, and it helps people to walk, right? In China, you can get this thing for $1,000. You know that if it's in America, it's going to cost you, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 because profit, right? How many people who have full paralyzation or semi-paralyzation, or they're getting older and bodies are weaker, they got arthritis, they got all these issues. If we were centered more on being better and living better and unity, instead of putting so much money into warfare, how much better would our society be? And the fact that people believe in these books and to say that, oh, but we gotta wait, you gonna have all that in heaven. I don't want that shit in heaven. I want that shit now. I need that now. Like I told my wife, we don't keep an eye on this type of technology, because if I ever get to a state where I need that type of assistance in my musculature, I want it to be, we have to make sure that we have enough money to get it. And that's the sad part about it. Think about it. You have to have enough money to make sure that you can live a healthier life, right? All right, got to close that door. You got to have money to do it. That's the bullshit of our existence. That's the bullshit that these people who take gap theory and convert that into a form of racism, so that you can continue to deny people basic qualities of life, and you can oppress people. You can take them for all their gain, Oh, guaranteed, those people, those farmers who are crying now because ICE is taking away all their employees, they crying now, but they weren't crying when they was buying their new trucks and having a great standard of living while they was paying these people, pennies on a dollar. But now they crying. Now they crying about it because even though they hired all these immigrants, their ass is racist. And they're only racist because they've been taught, they've been trained to be racist. If you go into any hospital and you look at all the babies, none of those babies are racist. Not one. Right? You go to a playground, kids don't, unless they've been taught at an early age. Don't be calling me back like that. You go to a playground. You can't have no unknown number calling me like that. You go to any playground. Kids just play with each other. They make friends so quickly, right? Because they're not taught, when they haven't been taught racism at an early age, they just play. They just play. They're just looking to have fun. Imagine if we can get out of our own way and get rid of all this bullshit. It brings me back to the Panari people in Venezuela. The man, I think his name was Howell, who went and spent 5 years with the Panari people. Well, he spent more than 5 years, but he said that it was 5 years before a crime happened amongst the Panari people, because they lived and they believe in unity. and they believed in living in sync with nature. They had no sense of sin or guilt. They didn't have a sense of racism. So for 5 years, they only had one crime, and whatever that crime was, they didn't even punish the person. It wasn't even a punishment. We mess it up. If we got rid of racism, there would be. If we got rid of racism, nationalism, ethnocentrism, tribalism, we could eliminate starvation. We can eliminate pretty much every disease. Hell, somebody said the other day, the guy on, he was talking about colony on Mars. We could probably already be there if we didn't have all this bullshit to deal with. And this Bible creates it. Much of the racism that we have today was created because of the Bible. Those teachings within the Bible. Because when you go back, now, was there tribalism? Yes, there was still tribalism. There was still ethnocentricities and ethnocentrism. I can't say that right. Those things were in existence. But it's like they got a steroid boost when the Abrahamic religions came onto the scene. They got a steroid boost. That's why we have the common term. There is no love like Christian hate. Right? Or there's no hate like Christian love. But it got a steroid boost because, now God is saying that these are my special people and they can go genocide all these other people. And for the ones they don't genocide, they make them into slaves. We even had this gap theory where they were saying that, they turned that into saying that, Black people don't have souls. Chinese people don't have souls. So we can treat them however we want to treat them. And then they tell you dumb shit, turn the cheeks and all that bullshit. But we just don't have it. And what's funny is that Christians don't even have it amongst themselves. They don't have it amongst themselves. It is still very true today that if you go every Sunday, the world, America becomes divided as hell. Christians don't even have it with themselves. I guarantee white nationalists are Christians. Southern Baptists are Christians. But I guarantee they don't deal with a Black church. They won't deal with a Black church. And the Black churches won't deal with them. I remember when I was younger and I was like, and so, this white dude told me he was Southern Baptist. And I was like, well, I must be Southern Baptist too, because I'm Baptist and I live in the South. So I must be Southern Baptist. But then as I got a little bit older, I started to realize that no, there's a very huge distinction between Southern Baptist and Baptist. And the primary distinction is Southern Baptist is white and Baptists are Black and white, but the Southern Baptist white churches don't deal with Black churches, that they think that they are above them. And it threw me off because I'm like 15, 16 years old. And I'm like, how can you be Christian, yet you are racist against other Christians? That don't seem to be what the Jesus character was talking about until I actually started understanding more about the Jesus character and how he treated that Canaanite woman and how he said that he only came for the children of Israel. I said, that's how Southern Baptists can be racist towards Black Baptists. Because then it started making sense that within the book, it teaches racism. And then that racism has been escalated into a national situation, into a systematic situation. Because the only reason that they weren't that way after the 8th century BCE is because their ass had been conquered by the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, and then the Arabs, and then Britain, different parts of Europe, then Britain. And the motherfuckers they've been on the oppressed side. Jesus couldn't show his full racism because he had no political power. He had zero political power. The Pharisees and Sadducees couldn't show their total racism because the Romans would have kicked their ass. They tried to revolt over and over and over again, kept revolting, but it kept getting demolished. So they couldn't practice. But if you believe their stories, prior to the 8th century BCE, they were genociding the shit out of people because of their perceived racism. We just call it was based on ethnicity at that time frame. Because all the motherfuckers looked like 8th century, they was all some kind of brown. They was all some kind of brown. But they all fought it. But they fought each other because, well, I believe in Yahweh. I believe in Yahweh. Well, I'm a Canaanite who believes in Yahweh, but his daddy is El and Asher. Well, I believe in Yahweh. His daddy is not El and Asher. Y'all fighting over the same damn storm deity. Just like Christians and Muslims fight over the same God of Abraham. Isaac, I wonder why sometimes these are big and other times they're small. I didn't do anything different than I've done before, but it's different. It's different. That's weird to me. The gap theory can't explain where black people come from or where King's wife come from, because before Adam was formed, the earth was nothing but water. There was no land for the humans to live on. Exactly. This is why I don't even understand how Origin even got to that point where he was talking about the gap theory. It doesn't even make sense if you're trying to, where Giordano Bruno tried to express that either. But what they are saying, though, is that there must have been land beforehand, but the war in heaven destroyed the earth to the degree that now it was just in chaos and there was nothing but water. So that is how they formulate that thought. Oh, and also they utilize the gap theory to explain why the Egyptians say that they were once ruled by the gods. And they use it to also try to explain why the king's list, the Sumerian king's list, have kings living for like 200,000 years, 25,000 years, and so on and so forth. That all of that happened before the war in heaven, which then destroyed everything. So to put it in the right context, they're using that to say that there was a earth with land, with mountains, with everything, in the same way that it is described in Jeremiah 4, that it was a thriving society, but then everything was destroyed and decimated, and then there was no inhabitants. But if everything was destroyed and decimated, which is where it doesn't fit, how can there be other people that survived if it's water world now and everything was in chaos and there was no dome for the air? So even within its own idea, it contradicts itself. But yet people were walking around believing this, right? Think about it. People, we had a Christian on here earlier this week, and he was saying that the writings of the early church fathers prove the Bible. Origen is one of those primary early church fathers that he was speaking of. Yet Origen is the one who promoted this more vigorously in Christianity. You give all this credit to Origen, but Origen following this theory makes absolutely no sense because there are so many holes within the theory, even though he's trying to use the theory to sew up some other holes. Because like Isaac is saying, if the whole planet got destroyed and now it's just water world, how can Black people or any people still be in existence? The theory falls in within itself. Do you like to vape and smoke, then puff on a cigar? No, I can't stand vaping. And vaping got some kind of poison in it that they add to it. Some kind of chemical poison they add to it. This here all natural. all natural from the earth. All natural from the earth. When it comes to people on earth, the words on how they start reading this object. When it comes to people on earth, the words on how the story went and the powers that went into it have not even been made up yet. This all is why deeper. This all is why deeper than we can imagine. Jarvis, there are not many words that I don't allow people to use on my page, and that word is a word that I don't allow people to use on my page. All right. I don't think you mean it maliciously, but I don't like that word. So if you cannot use it again, I appreciate it. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Bruce. I'm trying to figure this out. When it comes to the people on Earth, the words on how the story went and the powers that went into it have not even been made up yet. I don't understand what you're saying. Maybe it's just me, but I don't understand what you're saying. It looked long. I thought it might have been good, but I don't understand it, so I can't really respond to it. You like the movie Waterworld? Do you have whiskey at your cigar bar? I don't have a cigar bar anymore. We shut that down and semi-retired and moved to San Antonio. In our cigar bar downstairs, yeah, we got whiskey. When we meet here in San Antonio, October 31st, the first meetup is at Devil's River. It's a good whiskey bourbon. But yeah, I'm not a big day drinker. Oh, shoot, wait a minute. Hold on, Al. Gotcha, Al. Al. Black Al. Al. Now, see, Al was in the box earlier. He left. Probably had something to do. And he came back. Al. I'm gonna fight Al. I just saw a comment while Al was getting his life together over there. Can you prove that there was people before Adam and Eve? Yes, very easily. The fact that Göbekli Tepe is a human was built, and that it was built. Göbekli Tepe is somewhere around about 7 to 9,000 BCE, and that Taran Tepe was built around 12,000 BCE. Shows that there were people on Earth before the Adam story, because the Adam and Eve were here at around 4,700, 4,600 BCE. So yes, there are people here before Adam. There are many other societies that were in existence before Adam and Eve. The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Egyptians, the Cushites, they were all in existence before Adam and Eve. We got the buildings to prove it. Yes, Al's having some issues. Renee says Caucasians have been here on the earth the least amount of times. So explaining how they are the rulers of the land. Quite easily. Necessity is the mother of all inventions, right? And this is an interesting concept. It's not a concept. It's an interesting thought exercise that if you do it. When you look at population growth in most societies, a population will maintain itself at a certain level until the population grows to an extent where the land cannot provide for the number of people on that landmass. When the population of Europe grew to a certain extent where the land couldn't provide for them, they began to voyage out. So because they were voyaging out, inventions come. as you meet other people, you also increase in your innovations. So since Europe, the land of Europe, could only provide for so many people, they had to start going out, and they went out. And so they invented things to help them explore, help them go out, help them find the necessities that they need. So necessity is the mother of all. Right? That is the only reason why Europeans grew technologically faster than most other societies. This is also why the Huns and the Mongols grew faster than certain other societies as well, because they're the mountainous regions of the land that they lived in couldn't provide as well, even though they had a vastly more land, so they didn't have to grow too much. And that is why Europeans had guns before other people. They were able to sell. Their society just grew because of that. Quite simple. Has nothing to do with intelligence. Has nothing to do with aggressiveness. It's all about necessity. Right? So necessity creates invention. And necessity also creates, and not necessity, the will to live also creates. That's what creates the aggression. Because I did have a school teacher once tell me that white people were smarter than black people, because when white people came down to Africa, they didn't have guns, they didn't have the technology that Europeans had. And so white people were smarter. Now, I remember looking at that history teacher, and I was like, you full shit. But then one of my cousins on my dad's side stood up and started yelling at him and read his rights. So she got to him before I did. But it's all about the fact that, go to Europe today. Europe has nowhere near the amount of farmland than Africa or America or South America, India and all these other places. So they had to invent shit in order to sustain life. Jesus is not racist. Again, the Bible is symbolic. And whenever Jesus said he only came for the lost children of Israel, and yet he helped a Gentile. Yeah, he helped a Gentile woman that he called a dog. Yeah, that's sweet Jesus right there. That's sweet Jesus. He helped the Gentile woman. Ooh, after he called her a dog, and then after she submitted to being called a dog. So yeah. Jesus ain't racist. Whatever the hell. He said water comes from the sun. I'm not even going to respond to that. Where did that come from? Israel cannot have been, the Israelites were not the firstborn, since there were people in existence before the Israelites, and the Israelites actually merely are an offshoot of Canaanites. So no, Israelites were not firstborn. They just make a claim that they were the firstborn. So I don't even know what you're talking about. That's interesting. That is what perpetuates these ideas of racism, right? This statement alone perpetuates the idea of ethnicity and separation and racism, because he's saying that Israel was the firstborn. The spirit is in us, firstborn. Israel was not the firstborn. There were many civilizations before there were the Israelites. Israelites came out of Canaanites. Canaanites came out of Akkadians. There were many people around before Israelites. But because of that belief that is easily proven to be false, people think that they are better because they are God's chosen. I'm Kevin, I'm with you. How is somebody gonna say water comes from the sun? Man, how does water come from the sun? to suggest that water comes from the sun, how is that possible? That doesn't even make sense. I mean, the evaporation temperature of water is at such a degree that water could not even be sustained on the sun because of our atmosphere. And you know what I'm not, it's just water comes from the sun. Sometimes I'll be on here, I'm like, yeah, yeah. The other times I'll be on here, I'm like, oh, for real, seriously? That's what we're doing today. All right, so how many of you guys think you have a good grasp on, put a 1 in the comment if you have a good grasp on the biblical gap theory? Especially for those who were here early enough for when I did the long explanation of it. Yeah, I got to change the subject matter because I'm not getting into some debate about the sun creating water. All right. If you don't have a good understanding of the gap theory, you definitely go and research it. It doesn't take long to research it. Literally, you can research enough information about the gap theory to have a decent understanding of it in less than 45 minutes. Less than 45 minutes. And you can have a decent enough understanding of this gap theory. And now if you really want to dig deeper into it, that's going to take you some hours. But if you think you got a decent understanding of it, put 1 in the comments. It's like my own little survey here for whether or not I did a decent enough job of explaining it. Okay, got a couple of 1s. Does it count if I get it but think it's stupid? Oh, most certainly. I get it, Becca, and it's stupid. It is definitely dumb. It is a dumb theory. And that's one of the reasons why when people try to say, oh, early church fathers, I'm like, it was one of your early church fathers who pushed this bullshit. And it's a dumb theory with a whole bunch of holes in it. Right? So all you got to do is type in biblical gap theory and you can find some get started information on it. Go to Google Scholar and you can find some people who wrote some papers on it. All right. So you're definitely going to read Origin. You're definitely going to see where Augustine of Hippo went wholly against it. You'll see how it proliferated itself, especially from the 16th century up to the 20th century. And people start grabbing a hold to it just to justify racism. You'll find a lot of information on how they grab hold to it to justify racism. And it's also going to lead you down the pathway of the Nabatean agriculture because it's similar to it, has some aspects within that theory that those people who in the 7th century were promoting a similar version of it. And then there are some midrashes that support it. And if you're really going deep into it, you'll have to wind up reading some of the book of Enoch as well, because you're going to have to read Enoch to get a higher level understanding. Let's see, we got somebody coming up on the TikTok. This is odd. Usually I have more TikTokers than Facebook YouTubers. Maybe he's not coming up. Did I invite him or did he invite himself? How did that go? Well, it's not working. So we're gonna do that. It's not working. I don't know if he was trying to come up, constitutor, but it was just spinning. it feels like a lake of fire sometimes. Okay. But yeah, this theory, it amazes me how so-called intellectual people uh, oh, sometimes you gotta give it a second to load. Oh, okay. But it amazes me. So try it again if you want to come up, constitutor. It amazes me how people that we would say are highly educated people will latch a hold to some type of theory just to promote a political idea or a cultural idea, right? And that like literally makes no sense to me. Yeah. And this is why I always suggest that everybody, when you're researching something, when you're studying something, don't have a predetermined landing point. Even though I do not believe that this God exists, do not believe that God period exists, when I'm researching something, I don't go into it looking for information to support the narrative that I've already come to a conclusion of. I am just seeing where the information goes. And that's how you should research everything. And that's how it should be. Either y'all gonna give me a good question, because I'm not talking about some of this stupid shit y'all talk about on YouTube and Facebook. I ain't talking about no water coming from the sun and dumb shit. I need some good questions or statements, or if you want to come on the show, let me know. Because since I gotta leave at 2 o'clock, I don't mind leaving early. Early is always good. But stop letting these people with their foolishness get y'all all caught up. I don't know if IG is still watching. This has been a perfect time for IG to come back so he can yell at me some more. Because, I am perplexed. I don't endorse any form of racism, but I do endorse any group of people who have been marginalized to support the other group to support the ones that look like them that have been marginalized. And I don't give a damn who you've been marginalized. If you've been marginalized by immigrants, stop supporting them fucking immigrants. If you're being marginalized by the other people who've been here for generations, don't support them motherfuckers either. Before you can fight for equality, you have to first build yourself up to be powerful enough to fight for the equality. So on a higher thinking, I recognize that we're all the same. But we deal with this bullshit that is the reality. So yeah, I go to a black restaurant before I go to somebody else's restaurant. But now I will go to a restaurant that got some good food. I don't care who you are. You got good food, I'm gonna go. You got a good cigar, I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna go to some hole in one. This is where a lot of black business people get pissed off at me. Because I just as much as I would tell the community to support a business, I would tell that business, your ass better have a good product and good customer service. If you ain't doing that, don't expect anybody to come support your bullshit. Right? I'm not supporting the business. Like, what I won't do, let's say you walk up to two restaurants, both of them are selling the same thing. But when I look on this one and it's owned by a person and a black person, if them motherfuckers, and I know different states do it differently, but in Georgia it's numerical. If you got like an 86 and this person got a 96 or 100, I'm going to the 100. I'm going to the higher one. I'm not going to an 86. So there have been quite a few black businesses that used to get pissed off at me because I would tell them, you cannot expect anybody to support your business and you got a fucking 86 score. I'm not eating anything on here because if you got an 86, that means you had some contamination. Somehow, some way, you've had some contamination. I'm not coming in here. Clean this shit up. Pay the extra money, clean it up, pay the extra money to have them come back and do another assessment so that you can get your score up. And then you better keep it up. Because if I see you go down the next time they come, I'm never coming back. Because you ain't poisoning me. Oh, Lee tells you must be late. So the gap theory was used to explain Bruno Giordano. So research Bruno Giordano first. Around 1590, he utilized the biblical gap theory to say that Black people was on the planet before the Adam and Eve story, and that they did not have souls. All right, and so that the Adam and Eve were white, and all the way down through the line through Noah white, and so Black people didn't have souls, so therefore you can treat Black people the way they've been treated. So that made him in support of Pope Nicholas V papal bull of saying that you can go and take Black people as slaves and teach them Christianity, but they don't have souls, so it don't matter. Other people, a French dude after that did the same thing. Another person claimed that Chinese people don't have souls because they were here before then as well. So that is how gap theory is saying that people were here before Adam and Eve, and the war in heaven happened. That's why you can treat these other people differently, and that Moses, Noah, all these people were white, and God was trying to preserve the white genome. That's the short version. That's the incredibly short version. All right. But yeah, so we definitely, and I don't understand, you know, when I didn't get to it, when IG was talking about the Black colleges, I understand the reason why we needed the Black colleges. And most people don't know some of the most prestigious Black colleges were started because people like Andrew Carnegie or Rockefeller. I think Rockefeller is the one who has the endowment for Spelman University, which is one of the best all-women's colleges, you know, out there. Carnegie started because he thought that the children of freed slaves should have the opportunity to have an education. So they didn't come work for him. But these colleges, they were started because there was a need. We didn't have options, and there was a need. And that need is still valid today. Now, of course, there are white students and Asian students and every other different kind of student that go to these colleges still today. But there was a need, right? And still a need. And that is the bigger problem, is the fact that there is a need is a problem that shows how sick the mentality is in this country and any other country that participates in the same thing. The fact that there is a need to create something specific for a certain group shows the sickness, but there still is the need, and we should continue to fight for that need and continue to have and grow that and grow from that. Once we get to everything's hunky-dory, fine, we can get rid of it. But until we get to that state, which we are far away from it, no, it's not a good thing. We still got to have it. So I think and I like to say it this way, it sounds arrogant a little bit. I think with a high vibrational mind, I live my life based on having to deal with this low vibrational state of being, because we all living on some bullshit. All right. Mellow is getting ready to come up. I'm gonna give it some time, Mellow. Did I give it enough time, Mellow?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes if it's, I usually give it like 30 to a minute. If they don't load in by then I tell them to drop down and come back up.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, TikTok be tripping sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you though, man. Like, so what's your thoughts on this, what's the difference between this and the regular creation myth, the Bible gap theory? Is it because they're both like explaining creation, right? But does this one allow for like dinosaurs and fossils or no?
You know, none of the things that I read really dealt with dinosaurs or fossils, except for what this one man was writing in 1985. But he mainly focused on Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal, but that would be included in. So dinosaurs would be included in his thought process, and it would then explain why there are fossilization of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals, because what it suggests it's suggesting that there was a previous Earth that was living with life and teeming with life until this war in heaven destroyed the Earth, and then this guy had to recreate the Earth, which is what Genesis is trying to explain. So it does explain that. It does give them a way to explain that.
Right, because I've seen you got two like different thoughts on the age. So I guess from that story, one allows them to say that the Earth is only 6, to 10,000 years old according to the timeline, and the other allows the Earth to be existed in a continuous timeline, right?
Yeah. Well, to be more specific, the current Genesis story of Adam and Eve allows for it to exist only about 6,700 years. Right, that this Earth has been in existence that long, but then the other timeline gives you all the other time. So, yeah, I'll just clarify that not the 6 to 10,000 years, just 6,700 years. But I agree with you that that's what it's trying to explain. It allows for that, but it still has holes. The racism part gives it holes. What Origin was teaching didn't create those holes, but what from Bruno Giordano started teaching, that created the holes. You still there? Your microphone is muted if you're talking. Oh, he at work. He at work. Yeah, don't lose your job because of me, because I'm not gonna pay for your lifestyle. Vincent, we don't use that word on my channel. So if you can't speak without using that word, that language, you're not gonna use it. Thanks for the gifts. Appreciate that. And thanks for all the hearts. And thank you everybody for the likes and everything and all the support that you give to this channel, through subscriptions, through super fans, through super chats, memberships. I appreciate everything. But if your statement, don't tell me what you believe, tell me what you know, it's not something that I believe, it's something that they taught. I could care less if your mama was white and your daddy was black. I think I don't like when anybody use that word. So I care less about your heritage. Using that word, period, to me is offensive. So I'm just asking you politely, man to man, just don't use that word. And specifically, don't use that word on this platform, on my platform. You can use it in your life. But no, this gap theory, this is something that not I have created. This is something that other people, other early church fathers, Origin was the main proponent of it. This is what they taught. So I'm telling you what I know about what they taught. I'm telling you what I know about what Bruno Giordano taught. What is that French man's name? Let me find it real quick. His name is Isaac La Perriere, Isaac La Perriere, what he was teaching. And he was teaching that in the 1655. You also have.
Sorry about that, boss. I didn't mean to leave you in space like that, but I do gotta drop down. I got busy all of a sudden. I appreciate you letting me up.
My pleasure. Don't risk the job. Don't risk the job. You also had other people who were utilizing this in order to promote racism, and they were calling themselves scientists. You know, whether it was Charles Caldwell, Josiah Knott, Samuel Morton. Well, actually, those guys rejected the view that non-whites were descendants of Adam. Sorry. But you have plenty of. That's why I say you have to go back and you have to research a lot of this stuff. You should, if you wanted to know more about it. You know, like in 1867, Buckner Payne said that the Negro is a pre-Adamic human. And you had a lawyer, Dominique McCausland. He's the one who said that Chinese people descended from Cain, and also believed that the Caucasian race would eventually exterminate all of the races. So this is how people were utilizing this gap theory in order to perpetuate more and more racism. Oh yeah, Kevin, we'll have a cigar one day. So this is what those people taught. This is what those people utilized to create even more of a societal mindset of racism, of system, and be able to systemize racism. You have some channels teaching that Adam was a white person, a white man, because white man being created. Yeah, and that's what some of these people are saying, Sherry, that Adam was the creation of white men. White men were the ones who gained the soul. These teachings show the growth and development of white people in white society. Because one of the things that almost every group does is when they create a God, they create the God, and then after they create their God, that creates their people. Their people is usually them, right? Well, if you're looking at the Aboriginal stories for the Aboriginals in Australia, their God created them, and their God looks like them, and their God made them first. They are the people of their God. The problem with Christianity is that when the Romans took over this religion that came out of the Levant, over time they had to flip this God into being like them. They had to change the narrative. He can't be this Middle Eastern person. He got to look like us. And then you do. Oh, teaches that Adam was the white man being, but they are saying that they don't have a soul. Yaku created them. Now I remember the first time I ever heard that story is I was in boot camp. I was in Marine Corps boot camp, and in Marine Corps boot camp, I got irritated because the chaplain kept on saying, this was during the test time, we're gearing up for Desert Storm. So we were just gearing up for Desert Storm when I was in boot camp, and then I went to Desert Storm. But he was like, oh, God is for the Americans, God hates the Iraqis. And that bothered me. So I started going to the Muslim teachings on Sunday. And the first day that I went there, that's when this dude was talking about some Yaku, who was a scientist. And like that, it was all in Africa, and they had these 12 scientists. I think it was 12 scientists, and Yaku was jealous of the other scientists, and so he took some of the black people, went up into Europe, and he did some manipulations, made them into white people, and then Yaku like died or something. Then the white people came back to Africa, but then the Africans were living all peaceful, and then they started seeing all these problems, and they realized it was white people who was making all the problems. And so they sent all the white people back up to Europe and saying that white people were created through scientific experiment by Yaku, right? That he used leprosy and some other shit to create white people. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. After that, I asked my drill instructors, can I just stay in the barracks and chill and just study for myself? Because everywhere I go, they're teaching some bullshit. And then I encountered the Yaku story again when in 91, I discovered the Nawampians and their right knowledge. And I went down to their compound down in Georgia and with Malachi York. And I was like, yeah, you on that bullshit too. Plus, and I was just like, I'm good. I'm good. Which, funny story, the young lady that I was housemating with in 2018, she was at the Nawampian compound the same time that I came down to visit the Nawampian compound. Of course, I do not remember her at all. But when we were just talking one day and we started talking about that, because she used to listen in on my lives back then when I would be doing my lives, she would be sitting there. And I said something about it and we had a discussion about it. And she was like, so we happened to be in the same space at the same time, but then we never met each other until 2018. So, oh, okay. It's very common, Becca. She said, the lack of self-reflection hurts my heart. Why can your God only love people who look like you? What does it say about a person when they're all-powerful sky daddy? Is that mean-spirited and hateful? Exactly. Now, I can somewhat understand it when people were isolated. When people are living in an isolated situation, don't have any contact with anyone from the outside, then they will develop a sense that their God must look like them because they're the only persons on the planet. But once you start to encounter other people, and certainly these people in the Levant, that whole Mediterranean area, these people were in constant contact with each other for thousands of years, and yet still develop this sense of henotheism where they believe that their God created the earth and their God created them. The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Germanic tribes, everybody thought that their God created them and their God created the earth. Now they were henotheistic and believe in saying that, okay, I accept that your God exists, but this is my God. My God did this. But they all think that. And all their stories collide with each other. You would think that somebody would have been standing around like, there's no way that you Canaanites can be right. You Egyptians can be right. You Greeks can be right. You Germanics can be right. You Cushites can be right. That they should have been like, everybody can't be right, but everybody can't be wrong. So why don't we get together and try to figure out what's right? Because obviously, each one of our tribal groups have been around for a long ass time, as far back as anybody can know and anybody can remember. So maybe there's some commonality that we are all missing. And you would think we'd be able to do that today, that with so much scientific advancements and knowledge that we have, that we'd be able today to sit back and say, okay, there's no way that Christianity is right. There's no way Judaism is right. There's no way Islam is right. There's no way that Hinduism is right. There's no way that Aboriginals are right. There's no way that Ifa is right. There's no way that the Norse is right. There's no way that all these motherfuckers can be right. So let's try to figure out what is right to our best ability. But people are so caught up with the fear of, I don't want to go to hell, that they can't find their way into thinking outside of the little bit of box that they've put themselves in or that they've been indoctrinated. So it makes no sense to me that people can still be so stupid and be stuck on stupid. All right. But we got all this stuff going on. Let's see. Interesting. What do you say? I still believe in God. I've studied some religions, not as much in depth as you. How do we all look different and be coded by our fingers, hand, and our footprints? Genetics. You can have two people who are twins, and I mean identical twins, but they're still going to have some things that differentiate the two of them because your genetic code is going to manifest certain differences within each person. So to have something like fingerprints and footprints is not uncommon. But the main thing about footprints and handprints is that they are not here for identification. That's not why we have fingerprints. We have fingerprints and we have footprints because it is designed to help us run, walk, climb, grasp. It has a usefulness to it that is far beyond identification. Actually, it's funny how a lot of these conversations, me and my wife have similar situations that come to it. She stubbed her toe, right? She hurt her toe a while back or the other day. I don't know when she did. But we was talking about the fact that you don't know how important your big toe is towards running and walking until it's hurt, until you hurt it. And then you realize how important that big toe is. So your bodies are built for usefulness. And that's why we have these different things. That's like when you go underwater and your fingers get all crinkly and wrinkly, it has a purpose for doing so. And the fact that they are different is just genetics. We have the best beginning, and our story book confirms itself in Yeshua's name. No, you don't have the best beginning. That's for damn sure. Your beginning is fraught with information that doesn't fit history. I like the what's the Native American tribe that said that the sky people came down and they dropped off some people? Hell, I like that one better. That one would actually make more sense. There was already a planet. Some sky people came down. They dropped off some people. Those people became that Native American tribe. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. Yeah, this Starseed, all the different Starseed creation stories sound better to me than the Bible one. Because at least you put that one back so far back that it can fit into history. Or hell, the Anunnaki story is better than the Christian story, right? That one is better. I don't know if the Incas have that story, Bruce. It's an American. It's a North American Native American tribe. The names escapes me right now. But hell, I take the Anunnaki story on the creation of man is better than the biblical story, where you got some people, you got some aliens who came in and they said, "Oh, look at this hominid. Let's fuck around with their DNA and add some of our DNA to it and create people." And they failed 15 times before they got it right. That sounds more logical that they would fail 15 times first and then finally get it right. And they made them motherfuckers into slaves. That sounds more logical than I'm gonna take some mud and clay and hocus pocus shamalama ding dong, bam, there's a man. And then I'm gonna breathe into his life and he comes like, that's Pinocchio. I want to be a real boy. Make me into a real boy. Geppetto, Yeshua put your pedal. That's what that sounds more like bullshit. The Anunnaki story sounds better than that one. Shit. Sounds better than the biblical story. At least the Anunnaki story go back like what 500,000 years is what they claim, some shit like that. Like 200 to 500,000 years before they created man. No, let's go back like 500,000 years, which that would better explain Homo erectus and Neanderthals and all them other different hominids. Because, okay, yay, Vincent. There you go, Vincent. Now you're blocked with your dumb ass. I'm gonna give you one shot not to use that dang on word again on my page. After that, you done. There are very few things that I would ever block somebody for. But you want to keep using the little N-word on my page? Your ass gotta go. What's my entire? Okay, you about to come on. Oh, you must have accidentally hit it. I tried to bring you on Sosa, and it went away. But the entire point is the main point, which I've said, is the fact that this Bible and this religion, and pretty much any religion, can be utilized and manipulated in such a way as to promote any political or cultural regime that you desire, right? As this theory, which was originally trying to answer a question about the creation of man and earth and so on and so forth and the different peoples, then became racist. This is why we can promote racism and be racist, which demonstrates how the Bible and every other religion can be easily manipulated. I'm not getting into that deeper into the Anunnaki story because that's not the topic of today. If we was talking about the Anunnaki, then I would. And I've talked about the Anunnaki, and your ass was here when I talked about the Anunnaki. So I really wish you stopped asking me about the Anunnaki when you were present when I talked about the Anunnaki on multiple occasions. It's that. So basically, when man was created, however you think, at the time, they thought to make up a story. Oh, most certainly. Every story of the creation of man and creation of earth is a made up story. Every religious version, it's a made up story. Whether you're looking at it from the Norse, the Ifa, Aboriginals, Mesoamerican, Aztec, Mayans, Abrahamic, all of them are made up stories. And at the time they did that to what? Just make sure that they are in control of all these years. No, when the first, you're missing the point. You weren't here probably. So when these stories were first made up, they were making up these stories to create their creation, how they came to be, their particular group, their particular tribe, is what these stories were created for, to give them connection to something divine that they claim to be divine, which is merely just nature. It was later on when this Christian version of this creation story and the Bible gap theory and just Christianity itself then was utilized to put forth racism, right? That's why I said it has been used to explain the war in heaven and racism in Christianity. So it wasn't created for that purpose, but it became that purpose. And it's an easy thing to do Because once you say that you were created because and you God of the creation made you and your people and y'all special to that God, you are creating bigotry at that moment. All right. So as my wife has just put the stop sign and time sign, since it's 1:55, she being funny because she knows it's gonna take me 6 minutes to get out the house anyway. And I gotta make a stop before I go to get to my appointed place. I appreciate everybody for being here. Christianity wasn't the first religion. No, of course not. Christianity is a relatively new religion in the grand scheme of time. So I got to get off here because I got to be somewhere at 3 p.m. Central Time. So, and I need an hour to do everything. I need an hour. So I appreciate everybody for being here. Reminder, today is Friday. So please, I posted a basic video about this subject matter, explaining it, even though I did explain it in more detail on here than I did on that video, because that one was only 10 minutes long. And so please continue to support the videos, share them, like them, comment on them. I greatly appreciate it. We are having our meetup here in San Antonio, October 31st to November 2nd. Go to my YouTube page at Coach Rans 33. Click on the link in the description of this video. You'll see the link for the hotel. You don't have to pay for the hotel until you come. But we're going to have a host of events, and none of the events cost you anything other than you getting some food. But the hotel provides a free breakfast and a free dinner. So that'll save you some food money. I look forward to it. I do need, like, what did I say, 4 or 5 more reservations to make sure I don't have to pay for any empty rooms. So let's get that done before the 29th. All right. So I appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you for all the support that you provide to the channel. For those who are super fans on TikTok, who give gifts on TikTok, those on Facebook who are subscription holders and who give stars, for those on YouTube who are members and do super chats, I greatly appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who subscribed to the channel on all these platforms. Thank you very, very much. I greatly appreciate that. So please continue to like and share. And I'll be making videos over the weekend like I normally do. Right. So y'all have a great day. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations. I gotta get out of here for my wife. She fussed at me some more.